Hey, I'm Gina. Welcome to the Oh, There's More podcast, a space to get real and go deep. No more just checking the boxes and going through the motions. It's time to live out the beautiful life that God has written for you. On today's episode, we will be talking about the importance of processing grief so that you can move through it. Welcome back to another hangout session with me. I am so grateful that you're here, and I just pray that in these episodes you're beginning to see some things that maybe you didn't notice before so that you can start to get curious. So in the last episode, we talked about what grief actually is. For a quick recap, it's not just the huge life-altering moments. It can come in anywhere that we experience a change that we didn't want. And guys, that can be often in this crazy life that we live, right? So today, I just want to go more in depth on the importance of acknowledging and processing through it. Because we need to actually go through this process in order to move on. When we stuff it down, or we minimize it, or we ignore it, or we even deny it altogether, we get stuck in that place, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we realize it or not. And my heart is that we can learn to walk through grief in a healthy way so that we aren't held back in ways that we were never intended to be. The Bible talks about grieving. Jesus grieved, and it's something that honestly we in America are really uncomfortable with. And I want to help us get to a place where it's just a normal part of life. And one of the first steps in that is to simply be honest. We can't grieve what we won't acknowledge. So if I'm trying to deny that I'm sad about something, I'm disappointed about how things turned out, I'm telling myself, oh, you should just be grateful. You should not complain. Fill in all the great Christian isms or whatever you want to call it. That doesn't allow space for us to just be honest. And when we're honest and we can speak truth, you know what? I'm really sad about this situation. I'm really angry that that person didn't care enough to honor our relationship, or I'm feeling really deep disappointment by the outcome here because it's not what I thought it would look like. When we're honest about those things, and instead of being stuffed down, they're brought to the forefront, we can actually begin to process through them. And a lot of times there's that place in loss where we're believing a mixture of truth and lies. I give an example of this in the last episode. I had to grieve the loss of how a friendship now looked. We did not have a falling out. We're still friends. Her sweet family has been called to foster care, and I'm blessed to go help her each week. But because of us both moving, our friendship and in turn our relationship now looks different. There are parts of our lives that just do not intersect anymore like they used to. And I was feeling like, once again, I got my hopes up for things to be one way, and they didn't pan out like I dreamed at all. So many times we don't even know that something is affecting us. Maybe it's denial, or just being oblivious to it, or even not feeling like we have the right to be sad or disappointed because we're blessed and we shouldn't complain. So when I began to process this change in my friendship, and really other parts of my life as well because of our move, I realized that there were some lies that I was believing around the circumstances that were tainting my thoughts and causing me to have almost more grief. So when the painful parts, the lies and the truth were all identified, as I mentioned in the last episode, it literally just lifted off of me without a single thing changing. The situation was the same. Nothing was different, aside from the fact that I realized why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. God helped me identify the lies that were there and then showed me the truth. Naming what you're grieving is also really important. I'm feeling something about this, but I don't know what it is. Taking the time to sit down with the Lord and having Him help identify what's coming up for you is so incredibly powerful, because so many times in that place of grief, it's tied to a previous experience. It's tied to something else that we've gone through, and the current loss or pain can almost reinforce that past experience and cause the grief to feel bigger than it is. So we want to make sure that we're not only being honest, but we're acknowledging what's going on and naming the emotions that comes with it. When we do that, it actually takes away so much power that that situation has over us, and ultimately, honestly, the enemy. The circumstances can't get twisted into places of untruth or added pain when we're confronting it all honestly and openly. When we're willing to be vulnerable about it and to feel what we feel instead of trying to avoid it or dismiss it, everything changes. And it is a place of vulnerability. I don't know anybody that wants to feel sadness or anger or disappointment or any of the other numerous negative emotions that there are. Nobody would sign up and be like, yeah, let's go ahead and feel really bad today. And so we get in this place of immediate response that we're not even aware of, where we try to avoid the feeling. We try to do everything we can to shove it back down. Nope, we don't want to feel that. Please go down, go away. We're not going there. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, by distracting ourselves or by trying to be positive about everything. Like, well, at least I have this, or yeah, but other people have it worse, or all the things that we're so good at saying to ourselves and to other people. Grief is not wrong. And let's go there. There is this stigma in Christian circles that almost makes us feel like we can't address what we're feeling and thinking if it's not topped with thankfulness and gratitude. Like we're somehow falling short if we feel or think anything negative. And my goodness, that is so far from the truth. It's when we get stuck in that place that we really need to rethink what's going on. But when we're processing through it, that is exactly what we're supposed to do. The other important piece is to invite people into that space with you. God created us to be in community, and I've got an episode in the works for a future date about this one, actually, because I have learned so much about what it looks like and what it means. Now, I know that can sometimes be tricky. It can be difficult for a number of reasons. And whether it's that you just don't have the support that you need, or you're in a place where it just doesn't feel safe to let people in, trust me, I understand. There are some people who just can't grasp where we're at. They're going to say things that really aren't helpful. They may mean well, but their comments almost cause more harm than good. Telling you other people have it worse. You should be grateful. It's not that bad. I don't understand why you feel the way that you feel. I was able to get over it. Or, oh yeah, I went through a similar situation. I know exactly how you're feeling. We actually don't know how other people are feeling, because two people can experience the same exact thing and it impact their lives very differently. And there is nothing right or wrong about that. That just is a beautiful example of how God created us differently. So those people that have been known to not say those helpful things, the ones that don't exactly support you in the way that you need, they wouldn't be the people that you want to invite into your space to process through that grief. It is a place that you need to protect. And if you don't have a safe place to do that, I would encourage you to be praying and asking God to bring people into your life that can be that safe space for you. Here's something that's really cool that I learned. When we sit with people in those spaces of grief and pain, we don't actually have to fix it for them. A lot of times, what they need is just someone to be in that pit with them. I think it was Brene Brown, but there was this video circulating a couple of years ago. I think it might have even been a TED Talk or something like that that she did. And she gave an example of this pit. There was even a little animation with it, and there was a person literally sitting down in this pit. And there are some people who are just going to walk on by and not even notice. There are others who maybe go hand a sandwich down to you while you're in the pit, and they're like, here you go, I thought you needed some food, and then walk off. And then there's going to be other people who are literally going to crawl into that pit with you and just sit with you in that space. That's what we all need at different times. We need someone to just be present with us. As ironic as it seems, we get hurt in community, but we also need community to be able to heal. So if you don't have that, I'm even praying for you right now that God would bring people into your life that are that safe space, that allow you to grieve and process through things so you don't get stuck in them and you can move through them and past them. And the thing is that when you grieve something, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you're not going to feel any emotions about it anymore. You could still feel sad on occasion about it. What changes is that event no longer controls you. It no longer causes you to make decisions based off of what happened. For example, if your best friend totally betrayed you in a terrible way and you say, well, I've moved on, I'm over it, but I'm not really going to put myself out there and make new friends in the same way because, well, it's just not really safe. If we've properly grieved something like that, then we're able to step back out into places of vulnerability and make friendships again. When we've properly grieved something like that, our response is different. It doesn't control our future decisions based off of the hard thing that happened in the past. And I want to point something else out because I think this is another place where we can get really tripped up. So hear me when I say this, you need to forgive. It's in the Bible very clearly. So I'm not saying, oh, don't forgive, that's not really important. But what I am saying is that we have to grieve the things that have happened to us first before we can walk through true forgiveness. If we're still heartbroken about a situation with a person and we find ourselves having to go back to God over and over asking Him, help me forgive them, help me forgive them, help me forgive them. If you keep finding yourself back in that place of unforgiveness and it doesn't feel like you've made any progress, it may be because you haven't grieved the situation, the betrayal, the loss. And when I say you haven't grieved it, I mean you haven't acknowledged what bad was done to you. You haven't acknowledged the hurtful thing. You haven't named the emotions that were present with it. That has been stuffed down, most often because we didn't want to continue to feel the pain of it. If the loss doesn't have many layers to it, it's not super complex, it's straightforward, like with the change of relationship with my best friend. I was able to grieve that and it was immediately healed and I could move on. I don't feel that heavy weight of sadness about it anymore. Sure, there are still times where I'm like, gosh, I really wish that we could have time together like we used to. I miss the days when we got to come together way more often because where we were called and what we were doing overlapped in so many ways. But it's not that heavy blanket of sadness that is weighing me down anymore. Now, something like getting divorced, it's complex. There are often lots of layers. I've personally had to go back and grieve that many times because there are so many parts of it where things didn't go the way that I wanted. I'm single. That's something to grieve. There was betrayal. That is something to grieve. I lost my house and my community and my church because we had to move. That is something to grieve. My boys don't have their father in the home and they continue to have to miss one or the other parent depending on who they're with. That's something to grieve. As they're coming into their teenage years and I don't have the father figure, the man in the house to help with some of the guidance, I have to grieve that. So there's new things that have continued to come up in this 9 years of being divorced that I've had to process through. That is normal. When I speak of a situation where we have to continue to go back and ask forgiveness, I'm speaking of something that happened one time, it's done and over with, and we've not grieved it properly. And so that unforgiveness, that true unforgiveness, hasn't even been able to happen. If you haven't had a chance to listen to last week's episode, I highly recommend you doing that. It's short and it talks about the process that God gave me to walk through grief. It's been so impactful to me, and I know that it'll be something that will help others too. God had me create an actual journal, and it has the steps in it with prompts so that you can learn how to process through the places of loss and change and grief. These places of grief that come up are an opportunity to just get curious and ask, what am I feeling now? Why am I feeling this? As I say, emotions are an indicator to just begin to get curious. I'm now in a habit of stopping when I recognize I'm feeling the weight of these complex situations like the divorce. I pause and I start asking questions to see if there's something that I'm believing about it that's not true. Like, oh, this is just always going to suck. This is just going to be how things are forever. This is just the life I'm going to live. It's always going to turn out not in my favor. They are a chance to ask God, like, hey, why do I feel this? What is this loneliness? What is this yearning or this longing? And having him show up and tell me, hey, it's just because I've made you to be in partnership with somebody and right now you're not, and you haven't been for a while. And so that is what you're feeling. It's so interesting to have God point out what's actually going on and to be able to look at that versus what you thought was going on. Something like, I'm missing having a partner to be here with me, which is totally natural and normal because of how God designed us, versus the thoughts of like, oh, look, here I am again, all alone, having to do this. If only my ex would have fill in the blank. It allows us the space to put perspective and truth to things that could otherwise cause our thoughts and emotions to continue off into this place where we then can take up offense and anger and bitterness. We've probably all heard of spiraling and experienced it in some way, where the emotions begin to take over and take us to a place where we don't want to go. And this is such an amazing way to stop that spiraling in its tracks and to find our footing again. And I love that not only did God make us each unique in who we are, He made our relationship with Him unique. And that also means that how we heal is going to be unique to us. I have done some different, I guess you could call them art projects. I don't know. God speaks to me in what I call mini movies because I don't know what else to call it, but it's like I can see things in my mind and they're not necessarily a still picture. They're like a little movie that God's showing me. And so at times I'll try to draw that out, or I'll use a program called Canva. A lot of people are probably familiar with that. I use it for my business. I'll go on Canva and illustrate something on there that He's showing me to just help get it out. There was a time where a lot of things were dug up for me in this healing journey, and I literally felt like I was standing there looking at these boxes that had been unpacked, and the contents of my life for decades was just thrown on the ground. And the image of it just continued to come up into my mind. So I totally went on Canva. I found the mock-up of a room and the back of a person and boxes. And then I found the different There was a doll from my childhood and high heels from my 20s and books and just all these different pieces of who I was. And I put them together in this Canva illustration. It was all like cartoonish, nothing that I would, share with other people really, but it was just the process of being able to go through, this is what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling this heaviness. There's so many things that have been unpacked and that need to be grieved. And God gave me a way that was so therapeutic and unique to me to be able to grieve that. There are some other things that God has shown me. One of them was a backpack, and he showed me that I was carrying around all of these things that were not mine to carry because they were things that I had no control over. I drew out the backpack that was unzipped, and God had me write out words of all of the things that I was carrying around. And again, it was just so healing to be able to process through that, process through, what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling really heavy. Why am I feeling heavy? Oh, because I'm holding on to things that do not belong to me to carry around. And I've actually started to put some of these things that God's walked me through together in a, workbook, something like that. So maybe someday it will be available. Who knows? It's just been a really amazing process, and to feel like you're seen by God, like he knows me so well, so deeply, so intimately, that he would give me what it is that I need to be able to heal from these things that aren't helping me be the best version of me. There's no one size fits all or one right way to do it versus wrong way to do it, aside from just making sure that we're inviting God in, that we are seeking God and having him show us, letting him guide us to whatever process it is that we need, because he knows. Thankfully, he knows us better than we even know ourselves. And that means that he has healing for us if we're willing to get honest and be vulnerable. So just start with asking God, what is it that's going on right now? What is it that's making me feel so much anger, so much sadness, whatever the emotion is? And be open to the process, to discovering the things that God wants to reveal to you. Have God help you walk through it rather than trying to bypass it or do it all alone. As I've mentioned in other episodes, I have an emotions list. For me personally, it used to be really hard for me to pinpoint what I was feeling beyond those big categories of emotions like sadness or anger. You can head over to my website, ginapeak.com, and find that free resource. I would love for you to get it and just have it available for you as you begin to process through things. And the other thing is to just find the right people, invite them into that space with you. You'll find that there is just so much more joy and freedom on the other side of grieving. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with your people. You can go to my website, ginapeak.com, to find extra resources and info. Until next time.